Back in the end of July, God led me to follow Him into an unfamiliar state with only enough funds at the moment to cover one night at a hotel. God was also my only source of income, and He gave me a promise to be my unlimited support, to cover all of our needs out of His riches, and to be our home. That was about 10 months ago, and since that first leap of faith, God has miraculously supplied us by coming to cover our rooms, our food, and even several car emergencies as well. After we got started, God spoke to me in my dreams, and He said that if I wanted to keep having comforts of a nice hotel room and plenty of food, then I would need to start planting some trees. Then He gave me a vision of the words tithe and hope. In the vision, I was in a white wedding gown, waiting for Jesus to cover me and all of my needs as my husband and my Redeemer. After that, God led me to read the children's book called The Lorax. For those that don't know about the story, there is a man in the book who discovered that there was a special tree that gave him the ability to make something beautiful and prosperous for himself. The man made a factory and started to use the Truffula trees to create his product to sell and succeed. However, the man started to use up all the trees that provided him with comfort, and he was consuming all the Truffula trees that others needed for comfort as well. It finally came to a point when there was only one seed left for a Truffula tree, and the man had to choose whether to consume his seed or to plant it so that there would be plenty of new trees for him and all those who were depending on it. The man decided to act out of love, and he planted the last seed to create new trees to grow. In a similar way, I was faced with the decision whether I would consume what I was given to cover our needs, or if I would plant some of it as seeds to love others, as I also showed God my love and trust. Because we know that God has no lack or limitations, but the power of faith and love and trust can change an entire situation. After that night of encountering God about how to keep my comforts, I knew that I needed to give beyond the point of fear. So every time that I received, I would give first, and I would give bigger than I was comfortable with. I found out whenever I felt fear about giving, that there was a blessing of increase and multiplication at that moment. God would show me who to give to and what to give, and it was always a terrifying risk to myself. At times, it felt like I was jumping off a bridge to my death and putting all my trust in Jesus to save me as I gave all I had. It took all my faith in God to release what was in my hands as I yielded myself as a vessel of generosity and love from the Father's heart. So I would give even if my heart was pounding and my forehead was starting to sweat with panic. God showed up with new trees every time I did it too. And whenever I didn't have any money left to give, I'd find something to give. I gave out ebooks or audio recordings that I made. There's always a way to show love to someone and to help meet the needs of another. To love someone as much as yourself means that you would give them the same or even better than you would give to yourself. It hurts because it means giving beyond what is comfortable. Living in an Airbnb or a hotel near the city is not cheap. Most of the hotels require deposits that are almost the same cost of the actual room or even more. It cost more than $1,000 a week just to stay in a very modest hotel room. Yet that's where God led us to be. In every place where we've stayed, He has directed me to go to first, and it's always been out of my comfort zone. I would have naturally rather just preferred the cheapest place to stay, but God wanted to stretch my faith, my trust, and show me the power of His love. When we first got here, I couldn't figure out how we would ever survive. And then to have emergency vehicle needs on top of all of that was overwhelming to face. As soon as I received the next support from God after that dream encounter, I gave more than I felt I could. And God rewarded my faith and trust in Him, and He gave me $1,200 towards my room. Before I even took a bite of that blessing from God, I found someone to plant a financial seed to. I followed whoever God placed in my heart without judging whether I thought they would need it or not. There's no place for judgment if you're choosing to have love. Over and over, God would show up with more and more and more. I even had another car emergency when I needed an expensive repair in order to drive. And God showed up with over $500 worth of repairs so that I could drive again. Every time I planted a seed to someone else, God would come and cover my needs as well. He provided lavishly and in more ways than I could count. God also had me work out my faith by thinking on hopeful thoughts and positive results. That was really hard to do when my faith was pressed on all sides with threats of being homeless or going hungry or having no car. I wasn't trying to buy clothes or fancy cars or big houses. I was just trying to survive in a place where I didn't know, where I didn't have any comforts like of my own. Everything I had was what God brought. The thing that's been the biggest anchor through all of this is that God promised me that He would be our home and He would cover all of our needs with His generous comforts. Almost every night, God has met me in my dreams to give me faith strategies on how to get through this very narrow path that He has led me on. God shows me what will come in my dream, and He gives me promises of a specific amount of money that will come. He shows me what places to go before it is time to move again, and He shows me where to plant the next trees that I will need to sustain us through this journey. Every single day, I have had to stretch my faith in ways that I have never dreamed I would or could. I used to think that I had faith, and I would boast in my faith and tell everyone I had such big faith. Until the boots hit the pavement and I had to go on this journey, I realized I needed a lot more faith and trust. I had to go through so much deliverance of fears that I didn't know were there, because you don't know that you have those fears. They're like snakes that come out in the fire, and you don't know they're there till you're in the fire. I've never had to face more fears in my life, but I've also never seen such sweet comforts come from God as financial miracles around every corner. I love God as my best friend and my counselor through this journey. He showed me more love and kindness than I can even put into words. God showed us so much grace and love, even when I was falling into the dangers of manifesting my worries and fears. He sent those who carry His generous heart to rescue us when we were close to death. It's been a non-stop adventure of miracles and exploring the unending love of God to provide and protect. This has been my college-level learning about real faith and the power of God in ever-present situations and dangers. One time many months ago, I was in a parking lot waiting for God to send me the money for the next room. It was a very desperate and scary time for us. Someone had given me $500 and I was so relieved. But then God told me to give that $500 to a lady who needed to pay her utility bill. I wanted to cry, but I chose to trust. So with tears of fear and a trembling hand, I gave her what I had as an offering to God. Within an hour, God sent me another $500 and told me to go to a nice hotel. Another time, I had given all I could, which was only about $100, and it was to save somebody who needed to help pay their rent or else they were going to be evicted, and they needed $100 more. It started to get scary because nothing was coming in, and I started to cry and pray and ask God not to let my giving be met with regret and suffering. We were almost out of food, and I was getting overwhelmed with fear about what we would do and regret for letting go of what I'd been holding on to. A few days later, God sent me a donation for $1,000 to multiply the gift that I had given to someone else on his behalf for $100. I learned from that time not to be impatient, but to trust in God's timing to show up just in time with a tree of what we needed. The greatest breakthrough that I have encountered during this journey has been trusting God with my seeds of faith, and knowing that He would always give back much more than I had given on His behalf. When Jesus performed miracles of the multiplied fish and loaves, He started the miracle by prayer, and then He broke up what was given to Him to share with all. It is the act of giving that caused the basket of bread to multiply miraculously, to cover everyone's needs with plenty left over in the end. It is the act of breaking up the seed. If you don't break up the seed and sow with love and generosity, eventually you just run out. And that can be a dangerous place to be. God isn't limited to the economy or the negative prophetic predictions from those who are not really following His heart. God has an abundance, and He has a plethora of ways to make that happen. Giving comes from a mindset of abundance. Those who have a poverty mindset are too fearful to give to someone else's needs above their own. Instead, they isolate with greed. Having that perception of God's generous love to cover all of our needs and in abundance opens us up to receive a miracle of multiplication. God has led me to give beyond my point of fear and comfort so that we would be rescued more times than I can even record. It has been the strategy that has saved our life. The way to receive is to release. The way to be elevated is to allow yourself to fall into God's hand in the ultimate worship of surrender, faith, trust, and love. It means placing God's words over our own and loving others more than ourselves. Giving is the most sacred act of worship because we're showing God that with the act of faith that we believe the promise He has said and that we receive His abundance in our life in every possible way. There is no greater love to lay your life down for a friend, and there is no greater friend than Jesus. I love you. Thank you for listening and for walking through this with me. It means everything to me that you're here and that we have this family of love and comfort. Please see more about our journey and everything else about this ministry at diamondsfromthedust.com. This is Dannette. Have a beautiful day.